Welcome back to Talkin' Shit, where we are talking all sorts of shit. Schitt's Creek, that is. I'm Jess Sterling, here with my co-host, who's wearing his fabulous favorite mink coat today. Stuart, how are you?
I'm doing good. I've got it packed in my little suity case, and I'm ready to go. We're at the end of the season, finally.
We did it.
What, 13 weeks? And it's gone too quickly. I'm not too pleased about that. I kind of want this to go on a little bit longer. But we've got how many more seasons to go? 5 more?
5? I don't know. I don't remember.
How many times have you watched the show?
Hold on. There's 6 seasons total.
Okay, yeah, 5 more seasons.
Don't make Jess math on the podcast. Come on.
Yeah, we all know I can't math. If you hear a familiar voice, it is my old community building co-host and someone who's here to buy the podcast while we eat some dinner together. Josh, how are you?
I'm doing quite well. I will not be paying $1 million for this podcast, though.
What?
Are you sure it's such a sexier number than 900,000?
That's only because I was just about to sign the contract and instead slipped into a coma. So I'm podcasting with you from
teeny tiny coma, though.
From a very strange state, which is New York, which is where Dave is heading. This is great.
Yeah, David, off in his truck, possibly to New York. This is really interesting because obviously Stuart has never seen the show. He's watching one episode at a time. Josh, you have a very different experience in that you hadn't seen the show, but you binged all of it in what, a few days?
Oh,
binged the first season. Sorry, the first season.
Yes, I'm glad you clarified that. So I had seen, I think, through the Wine and Roses episode,
and you stopped because I love it.
I love that episode too. And we were enjoying it. And that was like right around the time Emily and I were watching it for the first time. And we were both like sort of meh on it. And then that episode was a bit of a turnaround. And it is strange that then we stopped watching at that point. But we stopped watching at that point. Momentum just stalled. And when I knew you were doing this podcast, I told you I will happily come on for the end of the seasons. But only if I can like binge one season at a time. And so I have only watched through the season 1 finale of Schitt's Creek. I have seen no further than that. So it is like a little bit of a different experience than what you are having right now, Stuart, which is closer to what my community building experience was. And sometimes I would feel like Community went too slow and I wish that I could watch it faster. And so having like piled up 13 episodes of Schitt's Creek into a little ball and just like bounced it around a room for a day, I'm pretty happy. Pretty happy. This is a great binge show, and I'm a little annoyed that I said that I will only binge the seasons right before we start podcasting, because now it's going to be like 3 months before I can watch more. That sucks. Yeah. The show's great. Love it. No surprises.
You're living the life that I want to live, because I kind of finish every single episode, and I have this moment. I mean, I love this podcast that we've started, and don't get me wrong, listeners, like I love all of you as well, but I resent it so much.
Oh yeah, this is how I felt on Community.
I know, why can't I watch the next one? No, I can't.
Because this is why I would never do what I did on Community again, ever, which is what you're doing now. So
you gotta be the smart one and be the one who's already seen all of the show.
Stuart, I know like sort of like this very unique, tiny violin problem that you have. Like intimately well. I don't need the sheet music. I can play that song by heart. So if you ever need to talk to someone, talk to me, but do it offline, because no one else is going to feel bad for either of us, because we're on a podcast that's very fun. So it is a champagne problem, I believe they call it.
Completely,
yeah. So Josh, what are your takes so far through 13 episodes of the show? Who you loving? Who you hating? How you feeling? About it?
Yeah, I've loved it. It's been very fun to see like some of these characters who I know through like pop culture osmosis, manifest on screen. I think like David Rose, Dan Levy's character, is one of those like very ubiquitous characters anymore, and Eugene Levy is obviously legendary. But I think I had forgotten just how much I missed Catherine O'Hara in my life. That, I'm a Home Alone kid. I'm a
Mhm.
Home Alone 2 Lost in New York specifically kid. Very close to home, that one. And Catherine O'Hara has been, sort of a fixture of my life since my childhood, the Christopher Guest stuff. And I just haven't seen her in a lot lately. And she is so fabulously weird as Moira. Moira is just like a terrifically weird character. Her shifting
Mhm.
accent, her various wigs keeps me very busy on Wig Watch.
Mhm.
So Moira, I think, is probably my favorite character overall, with Alexis close behind. I think she is incredible.
Oh,
Annie Murphy.
interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
this is
Interesting.
very interesting to me because obviously Moira feels like the chalk pick in terms of she's so unique. There's not another character out there like her. Um, Alexis, I find interesting, especially Stuart. We've talked a lot about the Alexis Mutt Ted of it all. And like, I
Yeah.
think as a result, Alexis has gotten a lot of LVP points from us. You know what I mean? Like, she's been the disgruntled pelican quite a number of times as a result of how she's treated Ted and just like her kind of relationship with Mutt. So I don't know, Stuart, what do you make of this?
It's interesting, but then I'm not surprised because Alexis as a character is actually really fantastic. It's just that her behavior in this
Yes, is
season
abhorrent.
is
Yeah.
not been the best, and it's like
Mhm.
I think you can separate the two because she's a comedically written character. She has some of the best lines, and just that the way in which she is at times in her own bubble, away from everything, and kind of isolated makes her
Mhm.
completely hilarious because she's totally I mean, she's Moira's child, like, completely. So the two
Mhm.
share that, but yeah, it's the behavior that comes with association with Mutt, the whole kind of drama with Ted as well. That's where she falls down. So maybe we might be getting to a point where we might be moving past this. Like, I mean, it's certainly gonna come to a head. So
It definitely feels like
Yeah.
it's going to come to a head, but I feel like I guess I feel similarly about Alexis as I did about later stage, especially Britta on
Right.
Community, where a lot of this for me is just where that was like Gillian Jacobs just absolutely amazing as Britta and so funny and often like rose above the material is how I feel about Annie Murphy as Alexis. Because I don't have a lot of Annie Murphy exposure. She's probably the
mhm.
least exposed of those four core
Yeah.
roses for me.
She's the most unknown for sure at the time of the
Like I've seen
show.
the
Yeah.
Black Mirror episode and stuff, but like I don't, I don't have a ton of experience with her as a performer. So she's just surprising me scene in and scene out with the ways that she could sort of effortlessly be deplorable, like she could just
Yeah.
like be
But she's so
really
charming in the
but
ways
she's
that she
Yeah.
very
is.
charming on her way to the
Yeah.
bottom. And I do see there are these moments in her character that are kind of interesting too. Sort of like the
Mhm.
I guess like so I've known tangentially that people love this show and worship this
Mhm.
show. And one of the things that's been hard for me in reconciling everybody's adoration for Schitt's Creek has been like, okay, but from what I saw, it doesn't seem like there's going to be much of an arc or a story, and it's going to be very episodic. And after a while, how much can you do episodically within this context? And I'm definitely now on the other side of season one. Oh, okay, there is definitely a story here. We're
Yeah.
definitely at a very specific place in the arc. And I think the person who I see the arc beginning with the most cleanly is Alexis. So I'm riveted by her story. I can't wait to find out how this all plays out. And I think that Annie Murphy is a queen. So it's her and Moira that are at the top for me, with a side order of Jocelyn, because I think Jocelyn is a great character to have in this universe as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
So happy to have more people in the Jocelyn camp. I
Yeah.
love her.
I could
Yeah,
do
it's
with a
funny because
whole lot less Roland, which is interesting because you would think Roland is sort of my Chang, but it ain't working for me this time. This time
I'm
it's
sorry,
not.
the pillow down the shirt as to make him look a little chunkier, that
I
didn't work for
can't. I
you?
can't. I can't with Chris Elliott doing that. No, I can't. And I like Chris Elliott generally, but this is not it for me so far,
Yeah.
at least.
Yeah, I think I mean Stuart and I were pretty surprised, and we'll talk a little bit more in depth about this next week during our season wrap up. But I think both of us were a little surprised that Roland wasn't getting more disgruntled Pelican points throughout the season. Like you'd think based on the first few episodes that we're like, you might as well just call it the Roland Award. Like it's going to be bad.
Yeah.
But it turns out that like he's a pretty nice guy. Like he's pretty generous, as much as he's disgusting. He's also pretty generous. So, you win some, you lose some, I guess, with Roland. But, all right, let's do a quick little recap at the top of our finale, Town for Sale, and then we'll dig into some of these storylines here. Schitt's Creek is for sale, and the Roses finally have an interested buyer, so it's time to pack on up and move on out. David plans on moving back to New York, but he doesn't want to go alone. But when Alexis turns him down for an offer of living together, David asks Stevie to move in with him. Unfortunately, she misconstrues this as a romantic gesture, and when she realizes that it's not a romantic gesture, she turns him down. I cannot wait to break all of that down. When Alexis tells Ted that they're moving, he proposes. She would accept if she were staying, but she's not. So when Alexis finds out that Mutt continued to do community service solely to spend time with her, she confronts him and they sleep together. Ultimately, Alexis may be engaged, and she also may have cheated on her fiance. Moira graciously gifts Jocelyn a fur coat, which Jocelyn immediately regifts to Ronnie because it's just not her style. And Johnny and Moira are forced to endure a dinner at Casa de Schitt with the brutish and brash town buyer Andy in order to get the town sold. Unfortunately, right after he agrees to pay $1 million for Schitt's Creek, Andy dies at the dinner table, or at least goes into a coma. And the deal obviously falls through. So where does that leave the Rose children? Well, Alexis just cheated on her fiance, and David takes Roland's truck and skips town. So that's where we'll pick up next season on Schitt's Creek. Stuart, reactions to this episode?
So much happened. I'm watching it for the first time. I was there thinking, okay, we're getting into the thing. They're going to settle town. Something's got to go wrong. Like, there's no way they settle town and somehow stay there for 5 seasons. I think that might come later on. That's a little kind of speculation on my end. But when you saw Johnny just running exasperated to kind of break the news to them, they all start cheering. I'm not going to lie. I felt a little pang of just why are they that excited? I kind of, have they not grown to love the town like I have? But then you see through the episode, they have in certain ways. You've got the Ted and Alexis of it all. You've got David and Stevie. David, who is all over the place in this episode, and I can't wait to really dive into the real meat and bones of that. But then I was kind of surprised by Moira and her reaction to the whole thing. Because, of course, she does the comedic thing at the beginning where she's full on breaking down, crying at the beginning because of just how happy she is.
Yeah.
But then she kind of has this connection moment with Jocelyn, and yeah, she still wants to get out. It's not going to change her mind and stuff. But they were still displaying these kind of affections towards it, and that really kind of filled my heart. I'm fully falling in love with this show and the characters because it's given me those warm fuzzies, and I got that completely from this. But also it broke it as well. There was just so much that completely threw me off with this because I was expecting it to be almost like a celebration in a way. I didn't expect it to go in the way it did. So yeah, there's just a lot.
A celebration from the Roses, from the town.
I think both. I thought it would be that maybe the town is up for sale and they choose not to, or maybe it's something.
You thought it would be the Roses' decision not to leave versus them not being able to leave.
Yeah, and not just not being able to leave, but their chance at leaving, dying at the table in front of them is
trying to mime his hand to sign the contract.
Their path out was this sleazebag who walks in looking for this douche that he's buying a town from, right? Mm-hmm. And he can only be spoken to, he only speaks douche, which Roland is fluent in, so he's able to work him over. This is who they're going to have to get the hand from in order to leave this place. It's just so illustrative of the depths of their despair and how low they are, that they're willing to take a handout from this guy. And even this guy dies at the table. So it just says so much about the situation that they're in. And I agree with you, Stuart, that I really thought that they were going to decide to rip up the contract or, we have reasons to stay. And I think a lesser show does that. And I think the fact that the choice is ripped from their hands through death is pretty amazing. Really, really good, strong development, I think.
Yeah, and that they're able to play it off comedically, right? Like
Yes.
let's get into talking about Johnny and Moira a bit, and that dinner scene where Moira is really flirting with disaster. Like, she's playing with fire. She's, upselling this man because she obviously cannot stand him. He's rude to her and she just wants him to pay more. What's the harm? He's an idiot. He's an egomaniac. He'll pay more money for this town. And yeah, I think it's interesting that of all of the characters, we'll get into Alexis and David in a minute, but I think Moira and her friendship with Jocelyn is certainly something to watch and to admire, that they have that interaction. Moira genuinely does seem a little bit hurt that Jocelyn gave away this coat that she viewed as like this massive gesture of a parting gift. It's a very expensive, fancy coat. And Stuart, she genuinely seems pretty upset that Jocelyn so quickly gives it away.
I was a bit conflicted because I wondered whether it was because she was upset that Jocelyn had, in a way, rejected the friendship. I don't think that she took it as that. I think it was more that Jocelyn rejected Moira's almost not a way of getting out of Schitt's Creek, but a way of escaping it, in a way of like, well, here's a little bit of glamour you can have in your life. And Jocelyn's like, it's not me. And I think there was that kind of disappointment coming from Moira. I love the fact that Jocelyn did it in the most Jocelyn way of like, she tried to keep it to herself, but couldn't. And so forcibly had to like, kind of like, it almost burst out of her. Just, I'm really sorry, but I gave it to Ronnie. And of course she gives the coat to Ronnie, and Ronnie was hilarious wearing it. Be like, I'm gonna wait to win her and be like Pally LaBelle. It's like incredible. But I think Moira, in a way, I think kind of like the David thing, wants to take a Stevie with her. And I think her Stevie is Jocelyn. And I think if there was a way in which she could have rescued Jocelyn, she would have offered it. So this was a way of kind of giving that. But ultimately, Jocelyn doesn't want to, does she? She wants to stay in the town because she loves it and she knows where she belongs.
Yeah, she knows what she likes. She knows like the contours of her life, and she is not, viewing herself as someone to feel sorry for, which is like, this seems like sort of the arc of the season for many of these characters has been like, at first they loathed this place, and now they've come to care about many of these people, but they feel so sorry for them and they want to just like help in whatever buyout ways that they can. But that is not at all what these people need, and so they have not figured that out yet, and that's probably good for the longevity of the show. They have some growing still to do.
Yeah, it feels very similar to when Jocelyn takes Moira to her to Janine's, her hair salon, and it's like, this is your look, Jocelyn, not mine. It's like, okay, well, that the coat is your thing, Moira, and not Jocelyn's. It does not fit her. It does not suit her. She enjoys being in Schitt's Creek. She loves this town. Maybe you don't, but she does, and she doesn't want to leave. She doesn't need saving. I just really appreciate their friendship even more on this rewatch, because it feels like something that you can kind of, if you're not paying super close attention, I think you may miss some of the finer details of it and just how sweet it is. I think like Johnny is the character, when I leave season 1 of the show, I feel like we haven't seen as much of Johnny as I remembered seeing. He feels a little bit less dimensional than the other Roses, in terms of, it's kind of one note, right? Like he's the breadwinner, he is the provider for the family, and his entire job, his entire arc is, I'm going to fix this, I'm going to get us out of here, I'm going to get us out of the situation. And I think that's kind of a little bit of the same here, Josh, with the finale, where that he's sprinting at the beginning of the episode to tell them
so funny.
They're moving.
Eugene Levy is unbelievable. That was so good. So good.
just has so many suits. He's just running in suit. I'm like, wait, running in a suit, man? Just like do a brisk walk, you don't have to sprint. But yeah, it's just you could tell that he feels this immense pressure to get his family out of this situation because I'm sure he feels partially responsible, right? It was his his not accountant or something, business money manager guy that is the
Like
reason
brother or
they're in
something,
this.
wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like he's the reason they're in this situation in the first place. So I feel like that's the biggest headline for Johnny this season, and I'm excited to get more going forward because Josh, as I'm sure you've heard, the show only gets better.
I have heard this. This is the rumor. I've heard the
Mhm.
rumor. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is
let's
great
switch.
because it's already very good.
Mhm.
So it's already very good. I really enjoy it plays very well just in a shot. And if it gets better than this, that's exciting.
Mhm. Let's
Like
talk
a
about
lot
Alexis.
better, you would say, by a lot?
I would say yes.
Wow.
And the
Okay.
reason is because like we haven't even met all of the like characters that we will know and love. Like I do think a lot of the side characters get a lot more fleshed out in the future in a way they're not really there yet. And Josh, something you pointed out earlier in this very podcast was like, oh, I didn't realize that there might be character arcs, right? Like sitcoms aren't famously known for having great character arcs. I would argue that this is one that has really, really lovely character arcs. And definitely something you want to keep an eye out for. Alexis specifically, right? She has a rough season 1, in my opinion. I'm not a huge fan of the love triangle, mostly because, and I feel like I can fully just, and I know I've said it the last couple episodes of the podcast, but like I can fully live in my annoyance with Mutt now. Like I truly find him to be so boring and pointless. He doesn't do anything. Like, I mean, honestly, Stuart, at the very least, if you're gonna
He doesn't do anything. He does a full month of community service that he didn't.
Good for him. Speak up, Mutt. Use your voice. Use your words. You're just annoying me at this point. The fact that it takes Alexis going to his barn that he lives in, and that's not shade. That's just like, facts. And saying
That's a little
to him,
shady.
and saying to him, why did you do more community service than you needed to, Mutt? And he will not admit, Stuart. He will not admit that he has feelings for her. It is infuriating to me.
So him not admitting it, do you not think that was slightly redeeming because he doesn't want to be a homewrecker?
Yeah, I thought that.
But he didn't admit it before she was dating Ted when he very obviously liked her. He didn't have a problem telling her all his problems he had with Twyla when he was dating her. Like
that was him being a piece of shit. Yeah.
Exactly. So what is he? Now he's okay. Now he's not going to be a piece of shit suddenly.
I think it flip flops. I think that like at times he senses kind of like what you shouldn't do in this situation, and then he is compelled by the fact that he clearly does have an attraction to Alexis. I am in no way saying that I approve of it. I think this whole thing is bad for the pair of them.
Messy.
I don't think they're a good fit, but I can't fully shout at him for this one because I think he tries to at least restrain the whole situation a little bit.
Isn't the move, Josh, to say, because it's okay, it'd be different if Mutt had feelings for Alexis and Alexis was giving him no sign or signal that she was interested in him. However, it is so obvious to anyone with eyes that Alexis likes Mutt. And so shouldn't he at least say, and obviously a lot of this goes on her, she is responsible as well, but I'm just focusing on Mutt because I find him to be so painfully boring that give me some redeeming factor. Shouldn't he at least say like, oh, if you're really serious about this, you probably should break things off with Ted? Like, no, instead they just end up sleeping together, which is probably the worst thing you could do.
Yeah, but it's like, asking Mutt to be someone he's not.
Yeah, he's boring and he's not entertaining. That's the problem.
He's not my favorite character on the show. I don't have
just
such a huge hate into him, but he's not my favorite.
This is what I said before. Is like, if you make me feel apathetic, I'm like enraged by you. Because like at least make me love you or hate you. Like don't make me be like.
Yeah, I guess that's where I'm having some disconnect with you. Is I'm just shocked that you have such a reaction to this character. Because for me, he's just he just exists on the show. He's neither like a positive or negative force for me. He's just there and isn't really worth having a strong opinion about. So the fact that you have such a strong opinion about him is just throwing me off, but feels very you. So in that way, grounding. It's a grounding experience.
The problem is that Jocelyn and Roland are both such characters, and they're so interesting in very different ways, that like to have their son be such a nothing is like the most offensive, right? Like your name
Jocelyn's a pretty normal person. Like Jocelyn, Jocelyn is a pretty,
except for the fact that she's with Roland. Like that's not normal.
Well, Roland must have his redeeming qualities in there, right? You would think, or that will give way at some point. But she's like a really normal, good person, and so her son is kind of just a normal dude.
Ugh, he's so boring.
He didn't get enough of the Roland in him. Probably for the best.
Yeah.
I'd rather him be boring than have like another, character just like stuffing a pillow up his shirt.
It's ridiculous. It's really, he has abs instead. Just abs.
Yeah, I'll take the abs over the pillow.
Yeah.
Just because it looks so ridiculous on Chris Elliott. What's he doing? What a choice.
It is insane. Yeah. Stuart, what did you make of Ted's proposal? Is this, I can't remember if we know how long they've been dating. It's only been a few months,
it's been weeks. Yeah, it's been months at best. Like, it was like, only and like a few episodes ago, I think they acknowledged that it'd only been a few weeks. Maybe that might have been hyperbole. Maybe they're kind of like trying to limit
That's how long they've been in town, or how long they've been dating? Do we know exactly how long they've been in town? Months at this point?
I would say at least a few months, because we knew. So when they had the dinner party where Alexis and Ted held a dinner party, which was just a few episodes ago, I believe they'd been dating 2 months, I think is maybe correct. Or maybe it was less.
That's
was it 2
right.
weeks? It was something like that.
I recall 2 weeks being thrown about, but I can't remember when. But either way, I think, and this might be kind of me projecting my own kind of viewpoints on how long people should be together before like getting married. I don't think it's been over a year.
Love is life.
They haven't lived together.
Yeah.
And it's all
when you know,
incredibly fast, but it's also maybe a reflection on small town kind of mindset. Like Ted is like,
right.
I'm getting a ring on that one because that one's the best one in town, and that one's gonna get away.
Yes, it does feel, Josh, like he's trying to nail her down, to make her settle. Right? He's like, she's a little flighty. I don't want her to go anywhere. I better strap this down for now. Lock it down with a ring.
To some degree. Then there's the other degree where he just sort of strikes me as like a too pure for this world kind of figure.
Yeah.
Do either of you watch The Righteous Gemstones?
Yes.
He reminds me of BJ.
Oh,
who's my favorite character on Righteous Gemstones for sure. He's just
can't see malice, and so he operates on that same level where it's like all of Alexis, all the things that should be red flags to him about Alexis, he just sees as like pretty little pink flags, and he's okay with it.
Yeah. Like
he just sees them as a book list of things to buy her.
He's BJ and she's Judy Gemstone.
That's too far, Josh. That is too far for Alexis.
No, if BJ isn't my favorite character, that's because Judy Gemstone's my favorite character.
She's a monster.
Oh, she's incredible, unbelievable.
Yeah.
I'm as big a Judy Gemstone fan as it gets.
It's really good. Yeah. All right, let's talk a little bit about David, because I think I was a little surprised, Josh, to hear you say you thought Alexis was the one that you could see the most of like a character arc from, because Stuart, I would argue that like David has the most fully fleshed arc this season in terms of he doesn't want to leave town alone at this point, which is very different from the David that we met in episode 1.
Yeah, I don't think it's so much a change of mindset. I think it's more that David is being honest for a lot of this, in that, yeah, of course, going to Schitt's Creek was not an enjoyable process, yet they've gone from opulence and wealth and they've gone to a motel where there are leaks and they have barely enough towels and there are bugs and all sorts. But David wasn't happy in that previous life. And I think that what has happened in this kind of character progression is that David has come to understand that and has found a connection with Stevie, one that isn't based on his wealth and being able to pay for things that his friends are like tagging along with. And he's found a genuine connection with someone. And with that comes the complexities of a relationship where he doesn't quite know whether they should be with benefits or not, whether they want to retain just the friendship. And as such, there is that hurt feeling that happens when the old life that was supposedly better and is much more enjoyable is dangled like in front of them all. And it's like, yeah, you can return to this and you can have the thing that everyone tells you want. And David perhaps realizing that he doesn't necessarily want that, but he is driven towards it. And so in a way, he has this honesty come to the surface, but then he represses it massively. And I think for that, like to have an arc that then has another dip in it, I think is wild for a sitcom like this. Like I totally didn't expect it. And buddy, I just want to give David a hug, right? We all not to feel that.
Yeah. I mean, he got read for filth by a 16-year-old, you know?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did.
So yeah, David's having a hard time for sure.
Yeah.
And Dan Levy is so good. He's so good. Like David is very funny and quippy, and there's lots of great comedy with him, but Dan Levy is like infusing this character with a level of gravitas that feels kind of almost unnecessary. But thank God he's doing it. He's very, very good as this character and makes you, to Stuart, to your point, like, I just want to hug him. Like, do you need a hug? Are you all right? Do you need a friend?
Yeah.
I'll be your friend. I also live in New York. He really makes you feel for him. And I'm very curious to see what it is that's going to bring him back into town. I have like my predictions, but I don't know how accurate they will, come, which is great. I think this is a hard show to predict. It surprises you. I would not have, like Stuart said, like the fact that this ended in a heart attack was not the way that I thought this was going to go.
Yeah. And it's interesting, Josh, we've talked a lot this season on the podcast about the David and Stevie relationship and how I know I have never been quite so thrilled with the fact that they had them hook up and the fact that like it continues on for a little bit, even into the finale of she thinks it's a romantic thing. That's not his intention. And she's hurt, right? Like it's very obvious that that's when she thought he was proposing this, like, let's live together as a couple. She was seemingly interested in it. He's viewing it as, I'm saving you from Schitt's Creek, as most of the Roses feel, right? Moira with Jocelyn and David with Stevie. I'm saving you from Schitt's Creek. That's not, she didn't ask to be saved. She wanted more from, more than what he was offering. What's your take? What a temperature check from you, Josh, on the Stevie and David of it all? Did it work for you? Is it working for you?
Not majorly, but part of this, and I'm gonna try and be enigmatic about this as much as possible, is sort of like with Community. There were things that I knew about Community. There are a couple of things that I like, quote unquote, know about Schitt's Creek, but don't know for sure, and certainly don't know the context. That has made it so that I'm not terribly invested in this relationship as a relationship. I'm invested in both of those characters a lot. I think Stevie's great. Really love Stevie. I think Stevie is a great flavor of character to have on a show like this. But I'm not like invested in their romance as a supremely long-term prospect. And so my guess is that this is going to be like kind of like a Jeff and Britta season 1 sort of deal. Where like this was sort of what they wanted to do for the arc of the show, but they got through a lot of it in season 1, and we'll get to a point in the future where they're like, nah, I think that there's other stories to tell with these characters. So I'm not terribly invested in it personally.
Yeah, Stuart, what about you? I know we talked at length about whether or not this really works. I know with Chappelle was very much in favor of it works because it feels real. And I guess like
that's true. It does feel like particularly like the emotional truth of the pain that both of them are in feels very real. So maybe that's also part of it, where it's like, this is too real. Like this feels really painful to watch.
I flip-flopped on this so much. I think I flip-flopped within like recordings of these podcasts of whether I am for it or against it. And I think the reason why I am doing that is because ultimately I want to root for characters to be happy, and I think if they were to get together, I think they could make it work and they could be happy together. But equally, I think they could also get that same happiness from a friendship. And so I see either option as being a good option, so long as one of those options is maintained. And the more that they flirt with either or of these scenarios, the more they flirt with it collapsing, which is what we've seen come about from this, because Stevie caught feelings hard for David. And you could tell by the way in which when he gives that invite, you could see her just light up with the thought of just, oh my God, not only is he going to whisk me away to New York and we'll get away from it and we can have the cronuts at a flea market, as Alexis does, but we can, you can see her just think about what this could be, and then it just gets cut out from underneath her when she realizes that he doesn't share those same feelings in terms of a romantic sense, but does have those strong feelings enough to invite her to go live with him in another city and go all in on the friendship. And it's painful to see them not have the same expectations and for that to jeopardize this friendship to the point where David drives off and leaves. And it hurts so much, which is why I'm down on it at the moment, because I do love me some David and Stevie when they're together. Do I think that it's going to be ruined long term? No. I think, of course, like we've got many more seasons to come. I hope that they do patch things up. But for now, I'm going to wallow in my sadness because it's over. It's over.
Yeah, I think the reason this, I mean, and obviously I've seen the whole series, so I know more than the both of you do in terms of what's to come with Stevie and David. But I think I always was just resentful that they ever even tried to do a romance storyline with them, because I always just wanted them to be friends. You know, it always felt like they had such a wonderful friendship that I was annoyed with the show for leaning into something that I viewed as very tropey and like overdone in a lot of sitcoms. It's like, oh, if you have two characters who are interested in like that sort of those genders, then they're obviously going to get together. It's inevitable. It always happens on every show. But setting that fact aside, I think the way the show handles it feels at least very real and true to life, which is nice. Because sitcoms can be very, over the top, as we've seen with a lot of these characters. But yeah, David is off. We don't know if he'll be back, when he'll be back, what's going to happen with him. But this seemed to put him over the edge. The fact that he invited Alexis to live with him, she turned him down, then he turns to Stevie, and it must feel very lonely. And that breaks my heart for David, because I've said this before, David is like probably my favorite character. I love him so much. I find him to be one of the funniest, but also just heartwarming characters overall. And I think Dan Levy's performance is just absolutely incredible. Like, he obviously got some acting chops from his father, because I find both of those characters to be very endearing when you wouldn't necessarily expect, especially David, to always be. So we'll have to wait until next season to find out what David is up to. But before we get into some feedback, Josh, I know you mentioned you had some predictions, and since you're not going to be on with us next week, Stuart, you're going to be here, so you're going to hold off on your predictions for now. Josh, what are you predicting for next season, for David, for any of these characters?
Yeah, so the only prediction I have is about David.
Okay.
I predict that David's going to get a flat tire and need to be hauled right back into Schitt's Creek.
You get Bob turning up with the
it's sort of like Saul Goodman reverses the car in the season 2 premiere. I think they're just gonna have to bring him right back. Okay, that's the only prediction I have.
Did you notice the Bob jog? I have to ask.
I'm sorry.
Bob, the character Bob. You know Bob who owns Bob's Garage. Make note that anytime you see him, whenever he's moving from point A to point B, doesn't matter if it's 10 feet, doesn't matter if it's 100 feet, he's doing a little jog. And when he gets to where he's going, does a little clap.
He jogs and does a little clap every time.
There has been one instance of this, and yet it has become
there's been more than that.
Of law within this podcast.
I can point to 2 times he's done it.
Is Bob the Garrett or the Leonard of Schitt's Creek?
Probably.
Where
He's
is he
not
on
as
that
much of an
spectrum?
antagonist as Leonard was. So
Uh-huh.
probably more of a Garrett than a Leonard.
Okay.
Like you kind of feel bad for him a lot more. So I would say
Yeah.
Garrett. Yeah. Bob is great. People don't appreciate Bob as much as I do. And for that, they should feel ashamed of themselves.
Who's the
He's
purer
incredible.
soul, Bob or Gary Gergich / Jerry Gergich?
Oh, Jerry, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we're both on a similar level, I would say.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. All right, let's get into some feedback because we did get a lot of it. So thank you all for sending in so much feedback. This is from Trish. I think this episode puts a lot of things in perspective as a viewer, how much all of them still want to leave, but how some have made stronger connections than others. Alexis is so superficial and not really thinking of anyone besides herself. David desperately needs to have company and connections he has made and wants to keep them. And I think moving Stevie with him would have been fantastic before they became friends with benefits. Now it feels so sad. I think the buyer guy was always looking like a heart attack waiting to happen. So when it did, I wasn't surprised. Also, no surprise him and Roland got on so well. I hope Moira isn't expecting she can take her coat back from Ronnie. Stuart, do you think she will? Do you think she's going to try to take that coat back now that she's staying?
I hope she does. Because I talked about this last week about the battle of the powerhouses of just Moira and Ronnie facing off, and we had a little tease of it with the whole "and you are." Imagine if we get Moira versus Ronnie part 2. Like, I'm here for that.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's just that's even as you just sort of imagine it in your mind's eye, that it is just such a great episode, right? Of Moira trying to get the coat back.
Yeah.
That all of the various directions that could go in are just way too amazing to not explore. So I expect we'll get something there for sure.
We also heard from Katie, who we've shouted her out before. This is Nick's wife, who's not into podcasting at all. She doesn't listen to podcasts.
Yeah, me
except
neither.
Our podcast.
Yeah.
Which is so exciting and just so nice to hear. And she says, thanks so much for the shout out. As Nick said, I'm not a podcast listener, and anything he recommends to me, I usually decline, but I've really enjoyed listening to your podcast. And she does listen on 1x speed, which we do appreciate, but poor Nick wants to listen faster. You know how it
1x is hard. 1x is tough.
It is.
Yeah.
We're currently on our honeymoon, 4 years delayed, which I want to say 2020 married people unite. I understand what that is like. So listen to this while driving through northern Spain. We loved hearing our names as we rolled through Asturias. I don't know how to pronounce that. Is it Asturias? You guys are more well traveled than I am.
Just say it is.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. That's it. Asturias.
Asturias.
Yeah, sure. So shout out to y'all. That sounds like an incredible trip. I'm honestly pretty jealous. I want to go back to Europe. We also heard from Jared with a little bit of a different perspective. This episode was obviously necessary from a plot standpoint, but it's really not very funny. I think that that's something a lot of sitcoms struggle with in their first season, and it's something that this show will certainly get a lot better at. Stuart, what do you think of that?
True. I mean, we talked about it quite recently, where we said that kind of, I think when sometimes the laughs dip, the kind of drama increases, and it tends to be like a difficult balancing act sometimes, because you do want to have those laughs. I thought this one started out really strong with the laughs. I mean, the opening scene alone with like Johnny running and being exhausted, and then Alexis and Moira's reactions alone, I think could have carried me through this entire episode.
Yeah, that would be pretty close to my number one cold open for this show. Was what we got in the finale, and I was living for Moira's reaction on top of just Eugene Levy's breathless performance, and then thinking about how many times maybe did they have to film that was a fun place to live in while I was watching that scene. So I thought that this was very funny where it needed to be, and then I think this show seems like, and based on everybody's reaction to the show who've seen the whole thing, that the show aims and often hits something big, like aims for something bigger than a show like this has to. And so sometimes, it's not going to be like bust out loud, hilarious every beat. But I think even within an episode like this that felt like it had to accomplish a lot to wrap up the season in a satisfying way, if it only had that opening scene, that would be enough. But I think it's got more moments than that too.
Yeah. Continuing some more critical takes. So we have a message from Ethan. Overall, I would say that I'm enjoying the show and quite enjoying the podcast. We appreciate that. But definitely surprised that it's considered so well regarded, although I'm expecting it to pick up based on all that's been said on the podcast. Maybe an opinion that will age poorly, but through the first season, I wouldn't say I've particularly liked Moira. Not sure if that will change. Maybe the type of comedy isn't quite clicking with me. And normally I like Catherine O'Hara and other limited things I've seen her in, but so far it hasn't quite clicked for me. Josh, as someone who has said on this podcast that you really love Moira, what do you say to that? What do you think it is that maybe isn't clicking with?
I don't
like
really know, because right now she's clicking with me in a big way. But I actually, when I was trying to watch the show the first time, she wasn't. And then it was that the Vineyard commercial that really completely turned it around that first time.
Erdlinger.
So I was already with that kind of in my heart, aiming for that on this binge watch of season 1. So I don't know. I think maybe to some degree, she's just so weird that you have to get used to her. I think she's
like, very outlandish in a way that feels like almost like fake in a way sometimes.
She's not vanilla ice cream. You know, she is not she's not like a basic flavor out of cold storage. She is, I don't know what like the unusual flavor of ice cream she's is.
She's like Rocky Road mixed with like cotton candy. Like it's
it's weird, and you're like, that doesn't sound good. And then you like keep eating it, and you're like, how did I live before Rocky Road and cotton candy? So I think Moira might be that.
Yeah, that's very fair. And then Aaron, we talked a little bit about this with Jared's comment. I'm actually surprised this is the season finale. It's not my favorite. There's not a lot of laughs, a bit too much cringe, and a bit of a bummer for everyone. Season 1 is great for world building and warming up to the roses, but it actually wasn't as perfect and funny as I remember. I thought the show found its groove faster than it did, but season 2, look out, we're coming for you. And Stuart, I think in revisiting this show and this finale specifically, and it's not a perfect comparison, but what comes to mind for me is almost like Ted Lasso, specifically season 2. I think with season 1, it was that like funny, heartwarming show that everyone loved, right? And not even that, but like the runtime was like a shorter runtime. So people go into season 2 expecting what they got out of season 1, and they don't. They're like surprised when there are some really serious moments and some really downer moments. It's not always the funniest show. And I think similarly about Schitt's Creek, it's a sitcom, so you expect there to be a lot of laughs per minute, not so much as filled with heart as I would say, and the show can be and has been and is in the finale. I think the finale isn't necessarily supposed to have you doubled over with laughter. It's supposed to have you wondering if these characters are going to be okay,
Yeah, as the season, like if I just watched the first couple of episodes and then jumped to the season end, I'd be like, they're dramatically different from in terms of my expectations, because I would expect like laughs every now and then, and for it to be kind of like quite simple in terms of story and character development. But as the season's gone on, they've been slowly sewing in these character beats, these little arcs that they're setting up and kind of like in some cases closing off and getting going. And so when it comes to the ending, it's what I would hope from it, which is a deeply complex season finale. I do agree with everyone's sentiment that it's not the laugh riot that previous episodes had. It's no cabin, it's no alley-vu, but for me at least, this is what I want from the show. Is I want characters who are real, and even as kind of crazy and outlandish Moira is, even as outrageous as David's fashion can be and everything like that, they still are real characters to me. And so seeing them get to this point at the ending where we are getting really some proper emotions coming out of them and real big decisions in some cases, for me it really works, in spite of the lack of the humor. And I think that it does what Ted Lasso doesn't do, which is it gets to that within one season rather than getting to it in the second season. Ted Lasso did a lot of building up but still maintains that kind of laugh kind of centric kind of focus, and then in season 2 really kind of ramped up the drama side of things. I think Schitt's Creek has just turned that dial a lot smoother for me, and it's doing it a bit more gradual, which I've really appreciated.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let's if you want to send in feedback, you still have time. If you want to send in like season 1 thoughts in general, you can email them podcast@talkinshitt.com or follow us on social media @talkinshitt. That's where you can find us. Let us know what your thoughts are. But let's get into some ratings. Of course, we have our MVP, Simply the Best, and our Disgruntled Pelican, our LVP. Josh, why don't we start with you? Who is getting your Simply the Best point this episode?
David, he got out.
He did it.
He's the only one, you know. I'm not saying that that's like, you know, what should happen long term, but as far as short term goals, the Roses were trying to escape Schitt's Creek all season long, and only one of them did it, and it's David. He's simply the best.
Mm-hmm.
Do you consider it that David got out, considering it might get a flat tire and have to put it in reverse?
Until it's currently, Stuart, it's Schrodinger's flat tire. It hasn't happened. It hasn't happened until it does.
Yeah. Stuart, what about you? Who is simply the best?
I am really struggling on this. Like really, because I can't think of a single person to give it to.
No one was like no one,
well,
or everyone is so good that it's.
Well, I think everyone has, in a way, is kind of lost in this episode. I don't think anyone's won. Like, if you think about it, like, Alexis has cheated on Ted and has kind of jeopardized that. Ted's been cheated on and has been denied a proposal. Mutt's Mutt. Roland and Jocelyn have had someone die in their in their dining room. Gloria and Johnny haven't gone out of Schitt's Creek. I think I've got to give it to Ronnie. Ronnie got a coat.
That's a good pick.
Ronnie got a coat.
Yeah, I like that.
That's hilarious.
I think if this was a system where I'd have to give multiple MVPs, yeah, Ronnie would be on the list for sure.
I love
Net
how
win
also
for Ronnie. Yeah.
the way she has it just draped on her shoulders is just everything. Like she's like, this is fashion. This is it. Yeah. I don't care if it's summer.
No costs are getting really good now.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna go with Josh here. I'm giving my point to David, and the main reason I'm giving it to him, not because he got out or anything, but because I think there's been some significant growth from him in terms of realizing what he needs out of life and realizing that like the friends that he had in New York weren't great, and they did take advantage of the fact that he had money to spend, and the fact that he realizes I need people, and specifically I need someone like Alexis or Stevie with me. I think that's huge for David. And so I have to give him my Simply the Best point. So 2 for David, 1 for Ronnie. Let's move on to the Disgruntled Pelican point. Stuart, who you got this week?
Oh, it's got to be, what's his face that was buying it? Andy, was it?
Oh, yeah. Andy, yeah.
That's 2 for Andy. He died. This is simple. Yeah. Who else is the LVP except for the guy who
always the person who died.
Also, before he died, he was wretched. You know, like he was just like a gross, lecherous dude.
I love when
Roland.
Yeah, when Roland says like, "Oh, he called me and he was like he was having sex while on the phone," and Johnny's like, "Ugh," and he's like, "That's not the problem. He was on speakerphone." Like, what?
How does that make a difference?
I suppose it makes it worse, but like it's gross no matter what, Roland. Come on.
Yeah.
Andy's gross. All 3 of us, everyone, more Disgruntled Pelican points for Andy in one episode than anyone else.
I will say it sounds like Andy's final 24 hours on Earth were pretty good. He had sex. He had like free meal.
Sex in the pan.
He thought he was about to buy a town. And was in like a generous spirit and even, was going to buy it for a little bit more. So he was like, sort of at like his furthest that he gets on the Scrooge point. And then he drops dead with that having been where he reached. So as far as that goes, Andy, at least you died well.
Call back to Bob Cratchit.
Yeah. Shout outs to my guy, Bob Cratchit. Yeah. I try to shout him out on every podcast that I do.
Let's talk about Wig Watch.
As Bob Cratchit's jog.
I'm telling you, the Bob jog is real, okay? People know what I'm talking about. But because we have the Wigler here, we have to do Wig Watch. And Moira didn't disappoint this episode.
What is this? She looks like she's gone Super Saiyan. Her power levels are over 9,000. Look at this. She looks like a chocobo.
It's not even just the wig. It's not even just the wig. Like, it's the entire ensemble, you know?
High collar, the opulent furs. Oh,
is that Catherine O'Hara, or is that the antagonist from Final Fantasy 17? This is an absurd visual, and I'm alive because I'm looking at it.
Yeah. It's incredible. I also think this is the first episode, Stuart, correct me if I'm wrong, that we've seen Moira just after she's had a wig on. Like, we see her post-wig real hair, which is unusual for us.
Looking normal and kind of like seemingly acting normal in the moment. I was like, who is this? Like, if you take the wigs off, does she lose her Moira-ness?
Yeah. Oh, I thought if she took her wigs off, her head would fall off. Like, it would just...
Oh, there is that as well.
Yeah. No, this is iconic outfit.
You know, that works considering she looks like Queen Mombi in this. This is a very, very bizarre look for Moira.
Yeah, I love it. We haven't seen many short hair looks from her. It's giving like Peter Pan vibes a bit, which I kind of like. I don't know. I'm into it. I think it's a good look. No, Stuart looks not Peter Pan.
I'm just wondering which version of Peter Pan you've been watching.
Oh, I'm thinking.
Are you thinking Robin Williams and Hook?
No, I'm thinking of
Moira Rose is an icon. That's it.
Yeah.
End of story. Just look at her. She's an icon.
Look at that face.
Yes.
It's incredible.
Best
I'm thinking
character.
of the Peter Pan when like they used to have women playing Peter Pan.
Mary Martin. Yeah.
I don't know. That's the one. I don't know.
Shout out to Mary Martin and Bob Cratchit.
Bob John Cratchit. All right, let's do our tier ranking here. We have one final episode to slot into place here. As always, we started up at the top with Hot Shit, then Full Bouquet, Love That Journey for Me, Ew David, and Shit Out of Luck.
Ooh, so nothing is hot shit yet.
Not yet. The thing is like we
yeah, I get it.
The good news is this is working. The tier system is working because most of everything is in the average, which is what it should be, right?
Yes.
So I don't know what vibes, Josh. Do you have a gut feeling?
Yeah, of course I do. I do. Watching this and now understanding the tier system as you wish to curate it. If I were a regular fixture on this podcast, we would. I would try and make this episode hot shit specifically to disrupt your system.
I'm getting like PTSD a little bit.
But I'm not a regular fixture on this podcast, Jess. I am but a guest, and I am a good guest. Okay. I'm not saying I'm a great guest. There's definitely better guests, but I'm a good guest who's going to follow your rules. And by following your rules, I will say that this finale, knowing that this show, according to a source no less reputable than yourself, Jess Sterling, is only going to get a lot better than a season that I loved quite a bit. Then Love That Journey for me.
Okay. Stuart, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about a Love That Journey for me for Town for Sale?
I'm not against that, but I would also make a case for perhaps a low placement on Full Bouquet as well. I think that despite the lack of big laughs and things, this is a formative episode, and a lot of stuff happens that's really impacting these characters. I think it's an important episode, but I think maybe top end of Love That Journey for me, maybe.
Okay, in my gut instinct coming into the podcast was the bottom of Full Bouquet. Reason being, I agree with Stuart in that it feels like an important episode. It feels like a spot that we can mark very clearly on the timeline of Schitt's Creek as there is growth. There is obvious growth, especially from a character like David, right? I think like it is a very essential episode. It's one that like if I was doing a curated viewing of Schitt's Creek, I would have to have someone watch this episode. It feels like an important episode on the timeline. And while I agree with some people in that it doesn't have as many laughs, and like that is a big reason why people love it, right? It's a sitcom. We love to laugh. I do think it has enough laughs to where I think it belongs above Love That Journey for me because it has both heart and it has funny moments. And so I would probably put it underneath Honeymoon, with the Cabin and Honeymoon still being above it, just because the Cabin is so funny. It's just like I still can't get over that. And I really enjoyed Honeymoon as well. And I just think Town for Sale has most everything I love. And even the Mutt and Alexis stuff, which I'm not a huge fan of in general because Mutt is boring. I think it's interesting, right? Like, especially the line where Alexis says that she thinks she has a fiance and she may have just cheated on him is very, very funny to me. So I don't know. I'll let you guys decide though. If you want to overrule me and put it at top, I love that journey for me. I'm also
your
cool with that.
podcast, not mine. If it were me, I would probably have it behind Surprise Party. So
Okay.
you know, that's how I feel about it personally. I think Surprise Party was the first episode that really had sort of that feeling of, oh, we all won. Everyone's getting along and this is great. And maybe this could work out long term. And so it was great to sort of glimpse that future in Surprise Party. And I think that was, if not more impressive to me than Town for Sale, I enjoyed watching that more than Town for Sale. And it probably evoked a similar level of emotion for me. So that's how I vote. But I also vote that my vote does not count as much as your vote. So, Stuart, you have to be the one who decides.
It's weird you say that, because I think that Surprise Party and Town for Sale are intrinsically linked because they are complete opposites. You get, like you said, the happiness of Surprise Party and how they all are getting along, and you get Town for Sale, which cuts it out because you realize that really what is keeping these people here is obligation or lack of finances. I'm far too easily swayed by other people's opinions. We saw this last week with Chappelle, just completely turning me 180 on the whole situation.
Chappelle's also very convincing, to be fair, so
yeah,
I understand.
Yeah,
I think it feels right in your heart.
Yeah, what feels right in your heart, Stuart? I'll let you decide. You want to do Love That Journey for me or Full Bouquet? Where are you feeling?
Full Bouquet. I'm gonna go for
Full Bouquet.
Yeah.
Man, I really thought by saying "do what's in your heart" you were going to do what I wanted to do. So.
Turns out I'm just more persuasive, Josh, I guess. You know, what can you do?
That didn't work out. Don't love that journey for me.
So it's going to land at the bottom of Full Bouquet. And next week we'll talk through kind of all the rankings. But it's interesting. Nothing ended up in Hot Shit this season. I feel like that makes sense to me. If anything, I think the Cabin had the best chance of it being a Hot Shit. But like, there are just so many great, incredible episodes we haven't gotten to yet. So I feel very good about this placement. And the good news is, Stuart, we no longer have to remember any of this because next season we are wiping the slate clean. We are not going to be plugging in season 2 amongst season 1. No. I have far too bad of a memory for that. That's not happening next week. So I'm very excited about this.
You mean you don't want to retain which ones we were really hot on in season 1 when we're at season 6?
Can I just tell you something that is so horribly embarrassing, that is so real about me? Like, I live in a house that does not have central air. We have window air conditioning units. Okay. They have filters. Sometimes those filters need to be replaced. I cannot for the life of me remember if I bought them. Like I may or may not have ordered them online. And I remember looking at like General Electric's website and being like, oh, they're cheaper here than anywhere else. Maybe I'll buy them. I can't find any emails on if I ordered them. I don't know. So what I'm going to do is wait 2 weeks and see if anything shows up. And if it doesn't, I'm going to have to go buy them. It's sad. Okay, Stuart. I watched the Buffy movie in October of 2023. And in my mind, in my brain, I had never seen it before.
Yeah, I was really confused as to when you were doing like a collective watch and were acting as if you'd never seen it before. And I was like, I'm pretty sure you streamed it for everyone to watch.
I did. Indeed, I did. And I don't remember it.
I've missed
pretty convoluted way of saying you're not going to remember.
It's just not okay is the problem. Like, my brain is broken, and this is why we have to do things the way we have to do them, because my brain is broken and can't remember anything, and it remembers really stupid, tiny things that don't matter.
Classic mulch.
Looking at the positive of it, it does mean that we can draw a line under it and have a new like base setting for a season.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's the positive. Next week, we're going to wrap up season 1. So again, you have time to send in your final thoughts on season 1. We're going to talk through some of the character arcs, our favorites, our least favorites. We'll calculate our Simply the Bests and Disgruntled Pelicans to see who is the official Disgruntled Pelican and Simply the Best for season 1, which will be really fun. I can't wait to get some predictions on that. And then they'll drive off into season 2, which I just have to tease a little something. Stuart, I warned you when you watched the finale, like right after we covered the last episode. I was like, you're going to have to wait like 2 weeks before you can watch another episode. The premiere of season 2 is a top tier episode. Like, it is an episode that when like silly, I don't know, periodicals or whatever do like top 10 Schitt's Creek episodes, top 20 Schitt's Creek episodes, the premiere of season 2 shows up on that list.
You can't tease it by saying how amazing it is after reminding me I now have to wait 2 weeks before.
I just did that.
I have to wait 3 months.
Evil. Fair play, actually.
So that's what we have to look forward to. Josh, thank you so much for joining us and binging all of this ahead of time. It was such a pleasure. It's been a long time since we've podcasted together, so it was really good.
I've missed it very much. Yeah. This was an absolutely delightful time for me. Thank you, Jess. Thank you, Stuart. And again, Stuart, if you ever need to talk to somebody who can understand the really tiny violin problem of having to wait weekly to watch a show that you could otherwise binge and then have to podcast about it while everybody else has really strong opinions about this show that you're late to, that you're watching incrementally, publicly. If that's ever stressful for you, feel free to reach out. I am available.
Absolutely.
Jess, there's no one who you can speak to who's been in your position on either of these podcasts. So
no, that's okay.
Unfortunately, on your own.
I'll just rewatch the show another time and I'll be fine.
Yep. Sounds right.
Josh, what do you have going on? I hear there's some fun stuff coming up.
Some shenanigans, yes. So post-show recaps is over, but we're just getting started bringing scripted TV coverage back up online over at RHAP. I am heading up that effort, and we are getting darn close to some podcasts being in your feed. So stay subscribed to that original post-show recaps feed. That's where this is all going to show up. We are going to be presenting some new things to you pretty soon. So very excited about all of that. Been a lot of hard work behind the scenes that Jess has been privy to. So it's very exciting that this is finally going to get back. I've missed all of you in podcast land. Very excited to re-engage.
Yep. Stuart, anything else to plug? Anything to promote? What's on your mind? Got going? Anything going on?
Nothing to plug. As you know, just been busy watching Survivor for the first time. So I have that to do with my time now. But yeah, if you want to get in touch, Stuart Drinks Tea on the socials, you'll find me there.
Incredible. As always, you could find me on Shit 90 Shows Taught Me, talking about Buffy season 2, as well as Felicity season 2. There's just so much going on, and I still can't forget Felicity for that haircut, but we move on. We try to move on. So check me out at Shit 90s Pod and at the Jess Sterling. And next week we'll be back with just a wrap up of season 1. We'll get to chat about season 1 all together. Until next time. What is it, Stuart? Is it best wishes or warmest regards? I can't remember because
you say warmest regards, I say best wishes.
Thank you. Warmest regards.
And best wishes.
Bye.